Hi, I'm Emma and I'm from Trinity in Bristol. We're a community building. We've been standing for about 200 years and I'm here today to talk about community assets. Over the last 15 years, the UK's seen a loss of around 75,000 community assets, from community buildings to youth centres to libraries, as local councils struggle to balance budgets. It's a bit of a sorry story, but there are people across the UK who are working to stem that tide and reclaim the land under our feet and save our community spaces.
So my name is Tim O'Shody and I'm the founder of Downham Community Land Trust, and we were the successor body to Fusions Jameen, a co-op which was Europe's largest black-led community self-build that is people in housing need, building social housing, and it's what we call an asset-based approach, which is the user ownership of the land to create more social justice. So rather than say like a developer coming as a private kind of regeneration, we make sure that the profits and the increase in the value of the land gets recycled to make sure that poor people, low-income people, disabled people have more access to facilities and so on.
Sounds like hard work. How long does this take?
Hard work. People are bloody hard work. Everyone's hard work. Everything's hard work. It's what you believe in, and also is what people have a right to. So that what we're trying to do, we make sure that when they do so-called regeneration, it's a community that gets regenerated and not just the physical land. And in order to do that, that's how you use increasing the land value to cross-subsidise that use to make sure that the people who were there at the time actually get the benefit. And so what we base it on is what we call the social capital. That is the bonds between people. We give them an economic value, and that's what we believe tackles intergenerational poverty.
And what's the impact of all this work? What does it mean?
What it means is that when I walk down the street, I know everybody in my street because we built the houses together. They don't all like me, but they do know me, and they do know that even though they might not like me, that when they needed help, they got the help to get their houses. And people are really surprised when they come to the area. People say hello to you in London because there's this community that we value. But the way in which you regenerate is you look at what you've got and what's the value of our area, the green space and the people and their community links. So everything that we do should look at how we strengthen that and not destroy it, which is what most regeneration does. That's what self-build. It's a community self-build, which is the building of the self, the individual, their views, their links with the community and then the wider community, and you build that person through the regeneration. That's what community self-build is.
I'm Jen. I work with Mycelial Space, so we do most of our work in London, but we also do some work around the country, particularly seaside towns. So we work in the now for longer term. Generally, we see where there's areas of to use land or buildings and what local communities could want to do with those spaces, what the opportunities are, what the needs are locally, where affordable access to space is needed for community use or for cultural or enterprise opportunities. So mostly looking at local neighbourhoods, but also perhaps if there's an empty building in the City of London and there's opportunities to bring in people from other locations who don't normally have access to that kind of space and that kind of location with the opportunities that it brings, how do you open that up to those people?
What's the hardest thing that you've had to do?
The hardest thing for us recently has been that we do a lot of our work with local authorities. And our agreements are for perhaps 3 years, perhaps 5 years, and we set them up with teams who really believe in them and who are really aligned, and we kind of create something which is great to get often. But at some point, sometimes the priorities change. That site then cannot have the legacy that it should have, that reflects everything that's been invested by the local authority and by the people that have inhabited it and made something out of it. And to see all of that energy lost when it doesn't need to be, because that space has been brought back into those standard commercial processes and for that kind of vision from the beginning, and that insight has just been lost. But there is that need, and that need is growing because local authorities are no longer able to provide that social infrastructure. So how do we find ways of working differently with local authorities or with other partners to bring that same triangulation of land, investment, and people.
What would you say to someone who is thinking about taking on a meanwhile space?
The purpose is not a meanwhile space. It's not a noun. Like a meanwhile space is it's just a description. It's a tool. You are using something for a temporary period of time to achieve a purpose. So you need to be clear on what your purpose is. And this is just a route to that longer term purpose.
Victoria Barrow-Williams from Margate, and my organisation, which I co-founded and director of, is People Them Collective. We came out of a need of wanting to create some space for our community. Margate is a super sort of conscious town, and it signposts a lot of spaces and activities and groups for people that are marginalised or need those spaces, but there wasn't really anything for the Black and brown communities. So that kind of drove us to come together. And then of course, the murder of George Floyd really created momentum for us to really think about mobilizing in a way that, in the simplest of terms, is to dismantle systemic racism, but to do that in a way that really spoke to us as a community, which was grounded in healing, creativity and joy, really. And so we've just been on a mission to establish a cultural centre. I mean, that definitely is evolving in what we think a cultural centre would be compared to 5 years ago to now, but it's very much, still really deep within those values of a place that is joyful, a place of healing, learning, and very much within the sort of Margate DNA of creativity and art and culture.
How's this type of work feel for people who don't do it?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, it's very much been a roller coaster. Been part of things like town deals and getting a flavour of what it's like to be part of a sort of government sort of funded initiative or not. And I think, it's definitely been a bit of a roller coaster for us. And again, we're a grassroots organisation, so we didn't come into the space as sort of architects or with any sort of necessarily prior knowledge in how to acquire buildings. There's been a lot of learnings. And we don't believe that spaces should only be acquired by those types of people. It's very much by us, for us. And so that means there's a very steep learning curve. And it means that we've, like what we see a lot of Black and brown sort of led organisations, there are sometimes gaps in like our knowledge and our expertise. So it's been a ride, but I think 5 years on, we're like, still determined to get to the mission, but also really aware that there's a huge amount of barriers for people like ourselves to acquire buildings. I mean, it's hard for most people, but for us, it's definitely lots of barriers there.
Christine Spriggs, place lead for Kindred. So for me, one of the biggest frustrations is in the work I'm doing, I'm just uncovering, seeing, feeling, getting so much need out there, whether it's people's housing, people's, health, whether it's, their general feeling good about life, their happiness levels, their feeling, the poverty that's out there, recognizing, seeing, experiencing so much of that, trying to do some stuff around that, working with people who, are really getting, the worst of what's going on in society right now. That's what is frustration, because there's only a few of us and there's so much of that. But targeting it, getting to know people, just saying we can't do everything, but we'll try and do something, and we are managing to do that. And it is managing to enable us to work with amazing people and start to make change happen.
Aftab from Legacy West Midlands. So Legacy West Midlands was founded 16 years ago to focus on heritage of the Bangladeshi community, but since then it expanded and we focus on arts, well-being, community cohesion, work with young people. And we have a building right now and we're looking to take on another building. So love what I do, love my job.
What's one of your biggest frustrations?
I think it's lack of funding. I think some people get a lot of money and some people don't. We work really, really hard for the money that we get, especially when the money is for those localities with big Black and Asian communities, and yet they're not around the table and decisions are made on behalf of them. So I'm trying to fight the power. The lessons learned is just keep going and keep building power, because, the power of intellect, power of writing, power of media, power of people, being around a table where decisions are made. So power is everything. In everything, I see myself as a servant. And the way I approach things is bring it and share it. So I'll fight on behalf of the community, and it's all in service of the community to try and bring resources back and share it in the community. You know what? I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but then I prefer coffee.
I'm Wendy and I'm from Plymouth. So Nudge is a gorgeous community benefit society that we set up in 2017. I'm co-director with Hannah, and we go about buying empty derelict buildings and bring them back into use. So we own outright, we own 3, and we lease 2. So we're about 4,000 square meters on Union Street. It's on a gorgeous, quite major street in Plymouth that everyone loves to say bad things about, but we love and want to kind of bring it back into use for lots of opportunities for the local community in Stonehouse.
So what do you do with all these buildings once you got them?
So the Clipper used to be a 24-hour pub that has a gorgeous jollof kitchen, and then we have 2 flats above. So that was our first building. But before that, we did Union Corner. So we crowdfunded. We brought back an empty derelict shop into use. The Millennium was our third. That is a whopping big Art Deco building that we have got youth investment funding to create 3 units, but that's 3 of 13 units that we're going to activate on the ground floor. And then the upstairs is a giant auditorium that was 2,000-seater cinema back in 1931 when it first opened. And that will be an amazing venue space. And the plot was empty and it was right in the middle of the street, and it was really important that that came back into use. That has 21 businesses. That's like social purpose businesses or CICs or sole traders. And they're just doing lovely things, from making flax to making visual art type of productions. There's the Climate Emergency Library. We've got It Takes a Village that work with families around STEAM, so STEM plus art they add in. We called it the plot because we sort of were losing the plot, but it's also about it becoming like that allotment space where everyone can share and grow together. So some gorgeous things have come out of it, and lots of vibrant activities happen from that space. And then we bought the Club 103. Club 103 is now a mushroom farm. We're going to start with aeroponics soon as well. We got some glass from Cargo, which is the flats down the road that they were replacing the glass on the balconies. That's going to build the lovely hydroponic space. So we'll be growing lots of gorgeous green produce. So a bit of an urban farm is going to be coming through on Union Street. And then people that have grown in our spaces too are already moving across. And then there's a big kind of warehouse space next door that we might do some meanwhile use in, but we have a housing scheme to be able to build 26 units for young people coming out of the care system. And we're really excited about that. So in one of the first units on the ground floor in the Millennium building, we're going to put a CNC manufacturing facility, and we will be working with Plymouth University and also Whitley, who have planning permission for 10 houses. And we're, again, really excited about that because that'll be opportunities for young people to come in and be curious about digital skills, as well as manufacturing, as well as construction. And we'll also then be able to print things for our buildings as well. So print benches, print partitions, print anything. So.
What's the one word of advice for someone who's thinking about doing something like this, taking on a community space or a community building?
So always we would say step by step, start small, put it all together. Don't be enmeshed on the end goal budget. Like, we never have a budget to start and finish when we start. And look after your volunteers, because they absolutely want to give you loads of practical support coming in and really helping sort things out. I'd say get people into those buildings early doors as well, so they can imagine the difference that you're trying to create, and then they join in on the journey. And be agile as well, because then you might need to follow that energy and change what you thought you were going to do into something that responds to what everyone wants.
Okay, my name is Christiana Ogwe, and my organization is Make Space Oxford. We are an organization that would unlock spaces and then also enhance communities to take on space and then to address those systemic change around spatial justice. Access to space is important because, it's all about spatial justice, really. Communities should be able to access affordable space to do what they need to do and to sort of coexist and to learn and, just to be able to do what they need to do, really. It should be affordable. It should should be equitable in terms of everyone should be able to access space. And I think that's why it's important, really.
What's getting in the way?
Well, I think the major thing is a system, and that's why we are trying to address, that systemic, issues where there's systemic change. Yes, it's good for us to be able to unlock spaces, meanwhile use. That is a catalyst, that is good, but it's not sufficient. The root issues need to be addressed, and that's why we are, focusing on spatial justice.
What does the win look like?
Win will look like everyone can access space. That's what win is for us. Communities can take up spaces on their own. We'll build their capacity to be able to access space, and people can actually access the space they need.
Ed White from Real Ideas Organisation. We're rooted in Plymouth and Cornwall mostly, but we tend to work across the southwest. I'm also doing quite a lot of time with a new startup land trust in Sherford, which is a new town on the edge of Plymouth, spilling into the Southdowns. We do quite a lot of work with quite a lot of odd structures, and we're doing that for quite a while. The weird and the wonderful include scheduled monuments, like an old fortification, a steamship recently up in the Bristol Channel. That's quite fun. If you think buildings are problematic, well, you put something in the water and watch that fall apart. That's really special. We're doing some quite sort of whole town stuff in Cornwall. They have some really interesting challenges around over-tourism and the stark inequalities that can drive in a town. So how do you find more community economic development models to start to address that? And more recently, just finishing a piece of work. I'm not sure it's a community asset, it's more a public asset, but the Tamar Bridge and Tamar Ferries, looking at how they their secondary income generation, but also how they can act a bit more like community businesses in the community which they're rooted. So yeah, you get involved in all sorts of. People tend to phone us up with like, I've got a weird problem,
Like a bat signal.
yeah, and it's kind of like, oh, we've got this thing, we don't know what to do. And I'm quite like that. I like the sort of blank page or sort of look. We've just got a set of problems. They're normally around the economics of something or the social impact or that kind of stuff. And it's like, well, we don't really know what to do with it. We're sort of stuck. What do we do next? And I quite like that sort of problem solving, but also sort of seeing the opportunity of how amazing things could be and helping working with people to try and move it along.
What would be the first little nugget of advice you might give?
I think always move from scope to scale. So the challenge is with a community asset, it's not linear. You can't do, the business plan and the design and you need to do it all at the same time because it's all connected. So you need to design everything at the same time. Problem is that goes can explode your brain. So you kind of need to find a way to move forward in a risk managed way that doesn't break you and burn you out and stuff like that. So I always think is look at everything a little bit, broad scope. And then from that exercise, you kind of knock out a load of stuff, you narrow down the scope, and then you look at that in a bit more detail and scale. And so you sort of inch forward, getting from a very broad, the breadth of a mile, to the breadth of an inch, to the depth of a mile. You're moving from scope to scale.
What does it mean to you when you go into a space or an asset that you've kind of worked with or worked on?
That's always really inspiring and exciting. It recycles back joy to you, doesn't it? So you put some energy in at some point as part of a wider system of other people doing lots of stuff. And to see it move forward, people are so excited. I mean, literally, last week, one of those people emailed me saying, we just got 1.9 million for this first building. So it's kind of like, it's a joy because it always comes back to what makes you happy and the justice that comes from that.
So I'm Dina Bamford from Colville Can. Colville Can stands for Communities and Neighbours, and it's a community regeneration project recognising the amazing talents people that are in the community and trying to get buildings and assets in the hands of them so they can do the things they're passionate about. But it's also about connecting with other people who are ethical landlords who might have a bit of space or might want to work together. And probably more importantly, it's about working with other people that want to do stuff. How can we help them to do it? So we call it our strawberry plant model, and we've helped There's a group of people who were presenters on a radio station. They've now got a radio station that's 24/7. And it's amazing. And we've helped somebody who did a wellbeing project, and now they've set their own CIC up. Nice. So we're trying to keep ourselves small and nimble and able to get these buildings into the hands of local people and set their own things up they're passionate about.
And why does this work matter?
Because it gives you the most amazing buzz, doesn't it? We're all like adrenaline junkies.
And what if you were talking to a community group for the first time, they wanted to get into, taking on a building, what would you say to them?
Think about what it is you really want and start talking about it as if it's going to happen. Because if you don't dream it, nobody else is going to dream it. Oh yeah, nobody's going to give it on a plate.
I'm Juliet Can and Director at Stour Trust. Stour Trust is a community interest company and we democratise access to land, buildings and spaces. We're rooted in the idea that everyone should be able to access a space of sanctuary, a space of peace, a space that builds their life-affirming needs. And particularly for me, I really want to feel like the next generation that come after me don't have to feel like they can easily be displaced, that they feel rooted, they feel a sense of abundance, that they're able to just live freely with each other. Yeah.
What's the biggest challenge of that type of work that you're dealing with?
So many layers. I think for us, the biggest challenge is experiencing how systems are very much aligned with sort of a capitalistic, extractive way of being, which essentially undermines all of our collective resourcing that we're doing on the ground. And just the flow of money, the flow of wealth, and how that for many reasons feels in some ways detached from what's necessary right now. We're living in a moment where we see the political, ecological and sort of social foundations being eradicated. And I think that for me, I want to be able to make shifts that leave legacies.
And what's been the thing that's giving you the most hope that that's going to happen?
Gosh, I've been on this journey for 20 plus years. What's giving me hope? I think the honesty and intention in which I'm approaching the work, but also others that are aligned in this network, the Mycelial network, that gives me hope. Sometimes I feel like things need to break before they're remade or rebuilt, and so there's a tension between feeling really fractured, but that within that seeing a light of new opportunities and new ways of being. And actually they're not really new, because I think a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, I feel like my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents have already built, and it's almost like, how do we shift away but towards something that was more regenerative before? So I'm always sitting between me living in the UK in a Western society with these values, but also intersecting with the values that my great-grandparents and grandparents taught me, and that kind of are coming into alignment. So I feel very sort of hope comes from knowing that the knowledge actually and the wisdom was already there, but it's just been sort of suppressed by certain ways in which we've been educated, or the way we've been taught that we can measure success or measure value or measure intelligence. And I think I'm always of the opinion that, no one should be cast aside, and everyone has worth and has value.
What's the one word you would say, or the one phrase you would say to someone starting this journey today?
You will be experiencing many, many waves of challenges, experiences, opportunities. But for me, foundation is about integrity, about who you are. Sometimes to get to where you need to, there'll be opportunities to kind of compromise that. And that might seem like the way to go, and that's a choice. But for me, it's like, once you stay integral to who you are and why you're doing this work, at this starting point, it might be a longer journey. There might be moments of stillness and moments of feeling like you're stuck, but actually that keeps you grounded and rooted and have that dignity to kind of go, yeah, I've done it the way I wanted to do it in sort of in response to the community or the people that you want to align yourself with.
I'm Pauline Johnston and I come from Glasgow, but I live in Stockport now. Civic and social, we are a people and place activation specialist.
What does that mean?
Gosh knows.
What does it look like? Explain it like you're explaining to my mum.
We make good things happen in neighbourhoods that need it.
So some of your other peers have talked about power and how power is one of the kind of driving forces in people doing this type of work. What do you understand about power and how do we share it?
I think there's different kinds of power. I think there's soft power, and in order to build up your own kind of power bank, you need to be influential. And to be influential, I think you need to have ideas. So as long as you've got ideas that can be shared and those ideas can feel like they're collaborative, then you can infiltrate and instigate action.
Tell me about some action that you've taken that you're like, that was great action.
I guess an example of great action is identifying an opportunity to change the culture of street design in Manchester and get people thinking about engagement with communities, which doesn't seem like a radical idea, but to certain people it wasn't on the radar, truly, and also the ability to know how to actually deliver it, you know, from a very strategic policy writing documents point of view, when actually there's creative people and people that have lived experience of being in communities like that and how to shift that change. And that's sometimes the missing link between the doing and the thinking. So I'd say, you know, getting £3.5 million for a local authority based on radical thinking about that was a good thing.
Good outcome.
Yeah. It meant discussion and it meant debate and it meant polarised opinions and it meant getting it all up out in the open, and it caused hurt and it caused transformation, and that's still ongoing now. The legacy of that work was not smooth, and you know, it was difficult, but the lessons that have been learned and the progress that's been made 7 years on from that initial project is bloody transformational. The impact's being felt. Children are playing on streets now where they didn't before. The air quality is better and people's lives are better for it. I can see that, and other people can see that now, and now it's been replicated finally. So it took a long time and a lot of anguish, but you know, now it's getting written, the actions are getting written into policy.
Is that what drives you then? What drives, yeah.
Equality, genuine equality, and getting the voices out there and listening and then doing something, rather than kind of sitting on it and having that, you know, fear of doing something approach. You know, it's just not working for the world.
Do you ever get scared?
I don't. No, I just get angrier.
I'm Kelly Abbott. I'm from CT9, Margate in Kent.
Nice.
But originally London.
Nice. What part of London?
Fulham, SW6, posh. Can't you tell?
I was thinking that. You're proper posh.
I'm really posh.
You are proper posh. What's your organisation?
People Them Collective. So we dismantle systemic racism, continue the work of our ancestors, and promote healing.
So why do you do this work in the way that you do it?
Blooming hell. I think it's just what I've got to do, innit? Like your calling, you know. I think I've got an uncanny ability to round up people, create community, and really empower people to hopefully make right decisions or better decisions, but at their own time, in their own pace. You know, see the world through rose-coloured glasses, because we're gonna be all right, everyone.
What's the thing that frustrates you the most?
Ignorant people frustrate me the most, but it's not. It's the system that makes people ignorant and makes them blinkered. It's not them. It's not. I don't believe that we all hate each other and we're all shit. I think that we all have empathy, and that we can, when you're given the right space to release your shoulders and release all them old shitty conformities that been ensconced in us, then we can release that and drop the ignorance.
Any final thoughts, Jerry Springer sir?
We gonna be all right. We gonna be all right.